Hi, welcome to my channel. So I had the worst labor ever on my son. It was 4 days of want to end this hell. It was horrible. But before I start my story, I just want to say that I had a very positive experience and a totally different labor on my second baby. And I'm going to do a vlog about that and link it below. So after you hear this horror, you're probably going to need something uplifting and positive. So please check out that video. Now I'm going to tell you the horrific story. I had a very difficult pregnancy. I had hyperemesis gravidarum. It was 9 months of nausea and vomiting and being bedridden. So I was so ready to end this pregnancy and just get this baby out. When I was about 4 days past my due date, I wasn't feeling the baby move as much as he normally would. So I went into hospital so they could monitor me, and they decided that they were going to induce me. So I was kind of happy, like, okay, that's it. This time tomorrow my baby's going to be born. I didn't realize it was going to take as long as it did. So I went to the ward. I think there were around 16 beds, each divided with curtains. So it was all just pregnant women at various stages. So I settled into my bed, and I think it was the next morning that I was induced. And then I was waiting and nothing happened. I was kind of disappointed because I thought, okay, come on, like, let's get this labor started. I'm sick of waiting. I've waited 9 months now, and I was still vomiting and I was still nauseous. So I was very frustrated that it wasn't working. So then they came and they gave me a second induction, and this was a different method. And I remember this one. It was like a giant like plastic bag, like a condom with liquid in it that they put in me. I can't remember too many of the details. But this was the method they used, and again it wasn't happening. So then they decided they were going to try and break my waters because they wanted to just help the process quicken up. So they tried to break my waters and they couldn't break my waters. So they told me that they'd give me one more chance to break my waters, and if they couldn't the next time, then I'd have to go for a C-section. And I really did not want a C-section. I'd had 9 months of being bedridden and not being myself, and I knew that the recovery from a C-section was so much worse than a normal delivery. I just really didn't want to have more time before I could just be myself. So I did everything I could to try and help break my waters. I pounded the pavement, and I was so sick that just like a little bit of movement, like I was so nauseous and throwing up, but I still was like, I have to just do this. I think I did every single step in the entire building over and over again. I did laps in the car park. I bounced on my ball in every position. I was just like working so hard, like, come on, waters break. So they finally came back and they were about to do it for the second time. And as they were mid breaking my waters, the doctors got like an emergency page and had to like just drop what they were doing and run off. So I was kind of lying there like, okay, did it work? Do I have to go for a C-section? Like, no one really said anything to me. I was like, well, I don't see any waters and I don't feel anything, so does that mean I've got to go for a C-section? So I was waiting there for a good few hours, like, kind of, what's happening? And then my husband just stopped from the midwife and he was like, sorry, what's going on? And she was like, oh, did they not tell you? No, her waters are broken. No, she's fine. She's fine. She doesn't need a C-section. So apparently my waters were broken. So, but again, like, I wasn't feeling anything and nothing was really happening. And then I was lying there, and I think like an hour later I was like, wait, I think I feel my waters have broken. I feel something wet down there. So I pulled back my covers and it was like blood everywhere, all over my legs, all over my gown, and I just started screaming because that's not what I was expecting. And my husband as well was horrified. The two of us were just like, what the heck is going on? And the midwives came running in and they were like, what? That's just your waters, relax. Like, come on, we'll get you changed. And I was like, I thought waters were supposed to be clear. I didn't know they could be blood. So anyway, my waters were finally officially broken, and I think this was 2 days or 3 days in, I can't even remember. But at this point, we were exhausted from waiting, and it was just such a long process. So I just said to my husband, look, we're not sleeping, we're not getting proper rest. So why don't you go home and try and get some sleep before things start, and I will call you if anything happens in the meantime. So he went off. I think it was probably like 10 at night or something when he left. So then about an hour later, I think he had just gotten home and he had just crawled into bed when I called him, and I was like, hey, okay, so I'm feeling something. So contractions have started, but you know, they say these things take time before anything happens, so they're kind of sore, but just try and get as much sleep as you can, and I'll let you know. Don't worry, I'll let you know when it's time for you to come in, but hopefully that won't be until the morning. So I was still thinking like he could have a good night's sleep and come in the morning. And then about 20 minutes later I called him and I was like, get in now. It was like I went from a pain of like 2 or 3 to 100, and it was just sudden, doubled over in agony pain. With normal labors, the contractions are kind of like, they start off slow, like a few seconds, and then a long time before the next one. But in the first hour of my labor, I was already having contractions lasting like a minute and a half, and there wasn't really a break between my contractions. Like there might be 10 seconds of like, wait, is it finished? Is that? And then the next one would start. So it was just pretty much like one long contraction. The ward was kind of usually quiet, and there was no way I could be quiet. So I couldn't go back to bed. So I was just kind of pacing the halls and being in pain in the bathrooms. And I couldn't go to a delivery room because you have to be a centimeter dilated to get there. And I wasn't dilating. So I was just stuck in the public areas, just trying to work through this. And then in the daytime, when the women were awake, I went back in the room. You know that episode of Friends where Rachel's in labor and all the women are coming and going and coming and going, and she's just stuck there not progressing? That was me. You know, you'd see a woman kind of coming in, you know, 9 months ready to go, and she'd be like, oh, is that a contraction? And the midwife would come and say, yeah, you're dilated, let's go to the labor room. And then they'd go off all happy. And I was there like 12 hours in labor at this point, like just hating everyone else on the ward. Especially one girl, this girl, in this ward, like people are usually very considerate of others. This girl was so rude and loud. Phones aren't allowed in there, but she was like chatting away on her phone. She decided this would be a great opportunity to have all her friends come over and have a party. Most women in there were either on their own or they had their partner with them, like one visitor. She brought up like 7 or 8 people, and they were so loud and they were just chatting. I wouldn't even be surprised if one of them brought a bag of cans. It was seriously like that environment. And I was like 5 feet away from them in the worst pain of my life, with the worst nausea, still throwing up, and I just lost it and I started screaming at them. This is not a party! All of you need to shut the up! I don't even know if they heard me. Eventually the midwife came and kicked them all out, but that girl, if you're watching this, you. So anyway, I was absolutely begging for an epidural. I wanted some pain relief. I was just in so much agony, but because I wasn't dilated, they couldn't give me an epidural. So they were giving me kind of other pain relief methods, some other drugs, but I felt like they weren't doing anything. My husband said they were. He said he saw on my face what I'd look like if I was a junkie, because I guess I was off my head. But to me, I could still feel the pain. I didn't think anything was working. So anyway, finally, a few hours later, I was 1 centimeter, and it was the best news I've ever gotten in my life. And by that point, I couldn't walk anymore. So they had to get a wheelchair and wheel me to the delivery room. And on the way we went past this reception, I just remember this couple coming in like early stages of labor. I just remember the look on the dad's face, because he was kind of like all happy and excited, and his face just turned to pure horror as he saw me being wheeled past him. And I just remember feeling really sorry, like, sorry, that poor guy, that must have been a shock. So I finally got in the delivery room and I could finally get an epidural, and the doctor administrating it was telling me to stop shaking my body. And I couldn't stop shaking, because when you're having a contraction, your body just shakes, and it's not something that you can control or stop. And I wasn't getting breaks between contractions. And she tried a few times, and she was kind of getting strict and angry with me. And I was like, I can't stop shaking. And she was like, okay, this is it. This is your last chance. If you don't stop shaking, you're not getting an epidural. And that to me was not an option. So I remember I just focused, and it's so weird, but like I felt like I came out of my body, and I was probably hallucinating from all the pain I was in and the lack of sleep. But like I remember like being above my body and looking down at what was going on, and my body stopped shaking, and I got the epidural. And then I was able to come back down into my body. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I felt. So then I pretty quickly went from 1 centimeter to fully dilated. They were like, okay, we're ready to push, so take a deep breath and push. So I pushed, and straight away they were like, stop! And then they're okay, you can't push, because on the screen they were monitoring everything, and apparently my heart rate was too high. It was dangerous. So I wasn't allowed push. So instead I had to get the forceps and the suction, and I had to get an episiotomy, which is when they cut you down there, which was a lot of fun. So they did all that, the suction, the forceps, and tried pulling, and it failed. The cap came off. And they tried again, and again the cap came off. And then they said, okay, if it fails one more time, you're gonna have to go for a C-section. And that was just the absolute worst case scenario, because if I had to get a C-section at that point, I'd have to get a general anesthetic, which would mean I'd sleep through, I wouldn't meet my baby, I would have been out for all of it, and I would have had to recover from both a C-section and an episiotomy. Anyway, luckily the third time it worked. They pulled him out, and I pushed as well. So they held him up to me, and it was just amazing. It was just the best moment of my life. And because it was a complicated labor, the baby was in a bit of distress, so they had to kind of bring him over and check him out and do tests or whatever. So it was another while before I finally got to hold him, and they put him on my chest, and it was just the best moment of my life. He was born at 3:19 a.m., 7 pounds, 12 ounces. And we were lucky that we were able to go straight home, I think a few hours after that. So that is my horror birth story. I know I'm saying worst labor ever, but at the end of the day, I got my healthy baby and I got to bring him home. And I know there are a lot of women that aren't as lucky. I'm counting my blessings. My next labor couldn't have been more different. It was so positive. So I'm gonna do a vlog and link it below, so make sure you check that out. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you wanna see more, please subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.